So, welcome to the Agile Strategy Meetup group. And this event is actually also co-hosted by Agility Lab because I thought the topic was so interesting that I could cheat and put it in another meetup group. And Janka, it's a real pleasure to have you here with us this evening to talk about the Antifragile Organization. Really looking forward to that. And our particular perspective is an interest for strategy, meaning that a lot of agile people actually hasn't worked that closely with the topic. So if there's anything you can share specifically around that, we would be really interested. But other than that, warmly welcome to our group and looking forward to hear your presentation.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Morten. And also welcome from my side. Just make sure you see my screen.
Yes, it's coming up.
Okay, great. So maybe just to say 2-3 sentences about myself. I spent about 20 years working at different industries and mainly at Bosch. And yeah, I have my own company since the end of 2016. And what we are doing is kind of, let's say, personal trainer, but not for sports, but for transformation topics. And when you talk about transformation, that is usually highly strategic. So I think there we will have a good mix, and you will see during the presentation that the topics I'm covering are highly strategical, and because what we need is a systemic change when we are talking about strategy and about the anti-fragile organization, of course. So, yeah, where to start? Let's start with the organization itself. Organizations are complex and adaptive systems. Yet, we still try to manage them with methods that belong to another era. Methods built for stability and not for today's fast-changing world. And for a long time, management was all about control, minimizing surprises, avoiding mistakes, restoring order after change. And back then, that worked well, because change only happened gradually. But what happens when change itself becomes a constant? What when the outside world moves faster than our ability to adapt, faster than our ability to control the pace of it? I've spent over 20 years working with organizations facing exactly this challenge. And I've noticed a striking pattern. Every time when a disruption or a surprise hit, they were not adapting. They were tightening control. So they had more procedures, more steering committees, more oversight. And all that slowed them down. They became more fragile. And then they wondered why they couldn't keep up. And this paradox sits right at the heart of today's management crisis. So the very methods that once brought us efficiency and control are now holding us back. They stop us from doing what organizations are meant to do: create value for people and for society. So that means we need different methods that are better suited to provide value in a world where we can no longer control the pace of change. Methods that actually benefit from uncertainty and change. And those methods exist, but they require us to rethink how we do business, how we structure and govern organizations. And they ask us to let go of some deep-seated assumptions. assumptions so deeply ingrained that we've mistaken them for facts. Assumptions like leaders must control everything, or efficiency is the pinnacle of optimization, and change can be managed. Sorry. So these assumptions are deeply embedded in how we still lead and organize. And they are precisely what holds us back. So how can we grow beyond resilience and flexibility? And what does resilience mean at all? Resilience is often held up as the gold standard, our ability to bounce back from setbacks, to recover from disruption, to withstand shocks and keep going. And resilience is important, of course, because it helps us weather tough times and find our footing again after challenges. But let's bring this to life. Picture a tennis ball. You squeeze it, you drop it, you may even stomp on it. And what happens? It bounces back to its original shape. And that is resilience. But imagine if every time you squeeze that ball, it didn't just recover, but actually comes back stronger, bouncing higher, growing more responsive, maybe even transforming to fit a new game. What if every impact made it better at what it does? And that is the heart of the difference between resilience and antifragility. Resilience is valuable, but it's only about restoring the previous state. In organizations, resilience shows up when teams regroup after setbacks, work hard to recover lost ground, and focus on getting back to normal. And there's some pride in enduring and restoring what was. But what if normal is no longer there? What if the old market has disappeared? Or customer needs have shifted? Or the world itself has changed? Resilience helps us to return to the familiar, but it doesn't teach us how to move forward when the familiar is gone. Because resilience never learns. It repairs, it endures, it holds things together, but it treats the organization like a fine-tuned machine, something you maintain, fix, and keep running in the way it always has. And like any machine, repeated shocks simply cause more wear and tear. You can replace parts, do some maintenance, but the machine never gets better from stress. Antifragility is different, radically different. To be antifragile, you need to be able to learn and develop. And that means only living organisms, systems, or truly adaptive organizations can be antifragile. So when you stress a muscle, it gets stronger. When a forest faces a fire, new species and ecosystems emerge. When the immune system is challenged, it learns and becomes smarter. So antifragile organizations take on the qualities of living systems. Testing doesn't just leave them standing, it pushes them to adapt, to invent and evolve, because they were tested. So they experiment, try new things, let go of old routines that no longer fit. And with every disruption, every challenge, and every mistake, they get fuel for new capabilities. And let's look at how it looks and feels. So when the disruption hits, a resilient organization activates its emergency protocols and installs a task force. The focus is on restoring operations, getting back to stability, the previous level of performance, patching up the gaps, returning to familiar routines. In an anti-fragile organization, the same disruption is treated as a signal, an invitation to ask new questions, try new approaches, and build new strength. So teams might launch experiments, rethink the way they work, or discover new customer needs they had never considered before. Antifragility is about being able to act on whatever happens and adapt to the new normal. So to summarize, resilience says, let's get back to the way things were. Antifragility says, let's use this to become something we've never been before. And in today's world, it's not enough to return to normal, because sometimes normal doesn't exist anymore. And the most successful organizations are those who turn surprises, disruptions, and even failures into raw material for reinvention. And that is a real challenge and the real opportunity for us now, to design organizations, teams, and our way of working so that every challenge actually makes us better. So the big question is how? How do organizations actually turn uncertainty into an advantage? Of course, not by following a blueprint, not by copying someone else's steps from a case study. In a world this fast, there is no recipe and no best practice that will always fit. But there is a pattern, one you can see if you look at companies that thrive on change. It's about a handful of guiding principles that shape how people think and act, especially when things get messy or unpredictable. So let's start with the most fundamental ones. Adaptability and supercompensation. They work as the organization's growth engine, detecting shocks and systematically turning them into opportunities for capability upgrades. Adaptability enables the organization to move in response to external pressures. And supercompensation turns that movement into a permanent upgrade. And if you're a runner or an athlete, you know what I mean. You stress the body, and when you recover, your muscles grow and you hopefully get stronger. So when combined, both principles create an evolutionary loop. The more frequent the organization encounters volatility, the faster it improves. Adaptability ensures detection and response, and supercompensation ensures that response expands the capability set of the organization. For example, like Netflix did. When the rise of digital streaming threatened its core business, Netflix adapted its operating model to streaming. So they used the pressures of this transition to build entirely new capabilities. The intense challenges of migrating from physical rentals to digital streaming forced them to over-invest in content production, in technology, and in data-driven user experiences. And the organization emerged as a dominant digital content powerhouse, with each wave of disruption driving even more capability and market expansion. So, adaptability and supercompensation are quite strong principles. But fast-moving environments require even more. to move with market speed means being able to make fast and content-aware decisions. Accountability and autonomy are the principles that make this possible. Autonomy puts decision-making power directly in the hands of the people who are closest to the action, the ones who see the early signals, the shifting needs, the real problems as they unfold. It gives teams the authority to act without waiting for permission. But autonomy alone is a recipe for chaos, unless it is matched with accountability. And that means if you make a decision, you also own its consequences. When teams are accountable for both success and failure, learning happens fast. Mistakes are surfaced, discussed, and used to drive smarter action next time. And together, accountability and autonomy create a system of self-regulating, high-velocity learning right at the organizational front line. Each team is empowered to act, but compelled to own and learn from the outcomes, like Patagonia does. They are known for much more than their outdoor gear. Their culture has long set the standard, and for years, Patagonia has empowered teams at every level to make decisions right where the action is. Employees are trusted to take initiative, to respond quickly to customer and community needs, and really own the outcomes, whether things go right or wrong. What really sets Patagonia apart is that all this autonomy is anchored in a shared purpose, using business as a force for good and making a positive impact on the environment. So when market challenges or environmental issues came up, Patagonia's teams didn't just wait for direction from the top. They tried new things, learned from what worked and what didn't, and stayed accountable for the results. And this combination, real freedom to act, clear accountability, and a strong sense of mission, has helped them to move fast, stay innovative, and remain true to its values, even when times got tough. But there's still something missing that makes the system, let's say, ready for everything, or for anything. And that is where diversity and redundancy come in. Diversity means not putting all your eggs in one basket. It's about building a deliberate range of products, skills, and strategies, so that when the world shifts, something in your system is already aligned with a new reality. Redundancy is about having more than you need, extra capacity, backup resources, teams that may seem duplicative until the moment they are vital. And that is usually when efficiency experts get nervous. But you need the slack capacity to act, to turn unpredictability into opportunity. Otherwise you have no capacity and then you can't act. So when a shock hits one era, diverse teams and redundant resources allow you to reallocate talent, attention, and investment, pivoting instantly to whatever is working now without just throwing the whole company into chaos. And Haier is a perfect example here. The Chinese appliance manufacturer reinvented itself as a network of thousands of micro-enterprises, each with its own strategy, market and customers. And of course some will fail, but others will break through. Hire's optionality and diversity creates constant innovation and risk-taking at the edges, while redundancy ensures the company can always shift resources and attention to the teams with the best fit for what is next. And when you combine these, every project, surprise and mistake fuels continuous learning and collective intelligence. And when these two principles work together, your organization is always getting smarter, faster. Learning isn't left to a small team or an annual review. It happens everywhere and all the time. So you can just look at BBVA, a major European bank that has embraced agility on a huge scale. So their agile teams work across traditional silos. They share knowledge freely and push new ideas through the whole organization. And this makes them faster and more adaptable than most big banks. So these 8 principles reinforce each other and form a system that helps you to sense, learn and adapt faster than the world changes. So ask yourself, which one could you bring to life in your team? So how could you make space for a bit more autonomy, a little more experimentation, maybe a wider set of options, or faster learning from what's actually happening on the ground? Because that is how you build an organization that uses every disruption or every surprise as a reason to get better. But as we learn to operate differently, another question naturally arises. What should we focus on? Especially when old answers no longer fit. And now it's getting interesting. So if we want lasting adaptability, we have to look beyond personal skills and mindsets to the operating system of the organization itself. That operating system defines how work is organized, how responsibilities are divided, how decisions are made, how resources flow, and how learning happens. When we shift the focus from people or teams to the system they operate in, then we begin to see that many of today's limits are structural and architectural. So most organizations still rely on pre-planned responsibilities and neatly separated work streams, designed for what worked in the past. And these operating systems are slow to adapt because they treat structural change as an exception. If we want enterprises that can evolve continuously, this has to change. The operating systems that assign responsibility and organize work around jobs to be done need to be designed for dynamic and relentless change. So think of football and tennis as an easy explanation. Both act on very different rules, right? If you bring a football rule set onto a tennis court, you lose before you even swing. And in almost all organizations, the rules of the games are still hardwired by industrial error management. So we are trying to make business in the 21st century with an operating system from the 20th century based on the logic and hierarchy of the 19th century. Well, hard to believe that can truly work today. So a good operating system turns opportunities into momentum. And before we directly jump to possible solutions and how that looks like, let's ask a simple grounding question. Question 1. What does our environment, our business environment, demand of us right now? Don't get disturbed by what management says, just what does the environment demand of us right now? Not what worked in the past, of course, not what our org charts assume, but what the environment is actually asking from us. And when we look honestly at today's world, some new demands become unmistakably clear. The environment demands radical sensing. Customer needs shift overnight. Technologies evolve weekly, risks emerge across ecosystems. So organizations must detect what's happening as it happens. Information can't sit in hierarchies. Context has to move freely. And sensing must be distributed, not centralized. Next, the environment demands ownership without permission. When everything moves faster, teams can't wait for permission. The people closest to customers must be able to act on what they see, instantly and responsibly. And that's a governance requirement. Decisions, rights must sit at the edges. Subsidiarity must replace control. Autonomy must be matched by accountability. Third, the environment demands instant recombination. Opportunities and problems rarely fit neatly inside a department. So teams need to find each other, join up, act, and disband again, with almost no friction. And that means our processes must be modular, flexible, and interface-driven. If processes are designed for stability, we end in fragility. If they are designed for recombination in dynamic fit with the pace and conditions of the market, then we get adaptability. So, number 4, the environment demands frictionless learning and adaptation. So every day produces new information and new surprises. And the organization must learn quickly and share learning instantly and integrate it structurally. And this is how the system updates itself. And finally, the environment demands structural evolution. When the world changes continuously, structure cannot be a rare event that happens once every few years. It must be part of the normal rhythm of work. So responsibilities update, interfaces shift, workflows evolve, and governance adapts as fast as the environment. And when we now put all these demands together, a clear picture begins to emerge. So if the environment demands sensing, autonomy, recombination, learning, and evolution, then the operating system of an antifragile organization needs a very different systemic foundation. So let's start with governance. And by governance, I don't mean more rules or more oversight or compliance, and it also only belongs to the board. I'm talking about the framework, the fundamental logic that defines the game. Remember football versus tennis? So who gets to act and on what basis? In an antifragile organization, governance is built on autonomy and accountability. Decisions sit as close to the work as possible. Subsidiarity becomes a default logic. If you see what needs to be done, you are the one expected to act. Not because somebody authorized you, but because responsibility is transparent. Context is shared, and everyone understands how their part connects to the whole. And this shifts governance away from the logic of control towards the logic of responsibility. And from that we can derive the organizational structure. Most organizations still carry structures that were built for predictability, stable departments, fixed reporting lines, rigid interfaces, all looking like an Egypt pyramid. But in a fast shifting environment, those structures turn into bottlenecks. Antifragile organizations use structures that are far more dynamic and networked. Teams align around jobs to be done and not formal departments, so they can form, dissolve, and reform as work evolves. And the interfaces between them, so the ways they collaborate, are designed to be flexible and temporary. Structures become living systems, reconfiguring itself as the environment changes. And so adaptation stops being a special event and becomes part of everyday work. Next is the process architecture. We just had a sneak preview on that. Processes are often underestimated, but they determine how work actually moves through the system. In traditional organizations, processes are optimized for efficiency and stability, and that makes them brittle. In antifragile organizations, processes are designed for recombination. They are modular. They have standardized interfaces where needed and a lot of room for variation where it matters. So they allow teams to come together quickly when opportunities appear and to change direction without waiting for a reorganization. And in that sense, processes act like the organization's metabolism, coordinating the work without slowing it down. And finally, in a world where everything interacts with everything, we need to learn from interactions in real time. We need fast feedback loops and easy ways to collaborate. And all this needs a digital backbone. Not technology for its own sake, but a real-time substrate that gives everyone access to the same information. A digital backbone creates shared visibility, traceable commitments, and a single point of truth for decisions. So it becomes the nervous system of the organization, connecting every team, every node, every product, and even external partners in real time. It allows alignment to happen through transparency rather than hierarchy. And that is what makes distributed autonomy possible at scale. So together, these components build up an operating system that shapes how fast we can sense what is changing, how confidentially we can act, how effectively we can learn, and how rapidly we can evolve. The operating system gives the organization the ability to sense earlier, act faster, learn continuously, and evolve with the environment. And that is what the environment demands of us right now. And that is what the anti-fragile organization is designed to do. So thanks a lot, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Janka. Would it be okay to stop the presentation mode?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about just one thing. Of course, it was a little bit in between the lines. What have you observed around this idea of strategy and anti-fragile organizations? Is there anything special to be told around that?
What's special is a point that is maybe a bit underestimated in classic management or traditional management. From time to time, this strategic fit comes up. That is, let's say, the whole voodoo around strategy. Strategy is you have the outside world, the demands of the outside world, and you have your inside capabilities, and hopefully they match. That is a strategic fit. And you do that, and then normally you do that every few years. So, or when you do the business planning, maybe. In a dynamic we have in current markets, you need to do that kind of continuously. And that is a big change in strategy. That means looking at this strategic fit becomes a core capability you need to have, because you are constantly sensing what is changing outside. Then of course you need to constantly checking if you still have this fit. So you really need to look at this dynamic fit. And then you need to build up your capabilities. And that is a point when this idea of ecosystems comes in very smoothly, because today we still believe that we have to build all of our capabilities by our own, integrating them vertically into the company. But in an ecosystem, when you think of services or special capabilities you just can book and use for shared value creation, then you can be much faster.
Thank you. Then one question more from me, and then we open it up and see if there's anything from the others. What's your I was almost saying, what's your favorite anti-fragile company at the moment? Or maybe there's not just one, but which are the ones you already mentioned? Hire, so I could imagine that's one of them. But what's your sort of golden standard box of
they are
of anti-fragile companies?
Yeah, they are very forward-thinking, and they have about around 30 years of transformation in their history. So when they started in the 80s, the first was about quality, producing products that actually work.
Yeah.
And they shifted to, so they just shifted the pyramid in 2005. And it took them 10 years until 2015 to transform the whole company. And by 2015, they had their digital backbone ready, so they could go beyond the boundaries of their own firm and become a kind of ecosystem, first with partners and later with service providers like recruiting office. So as a team working in the higher ecosystem, you no longer have to rely on the HR at your site or an HR from higher. You can simply book an external recruiting office that better meets your needs.
Yeah, maybe that's worth one question, because I think it was a little corollary that came from another conversation, but it seems like the anti-fragile organization has a capability to do transparent pricing of skill. I think the example you mentioned is exactly one where you say that we need something HR, and you know exactly what you need. So you just don't go to the best and the most expensive because you fear that you might not get everything you need. You actually know pretty much exactly we need this, and you can somehow price it and qualify it in a sense that you can source it from even a local place.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
also, but it also does. Sorry for that. What it also does is that your local HR, so the internal functions, this cross-functional stuff, they need to provide services that are comparable to market levels. Otherwise, they won't be booked in the future. And this competition leads to better services from the internal departments or teams.
Thank you. Okay, I promise to open it up. So any questions from anyone? Otherwise, I have more, but then please chip in if you want. Janka, I'm still reading your book. I have a weird ways of reading books, so they are laying there next to me, and I read a little all the time. So I have to say I'm still on the way through it. I was intrigued that you talked very much about principles. In that is there like a form you have seen which is somehow characteristic for the anti-fragile organizations? Because certainly they share a number of principles. That's what you talked about. Is there also something similar in their form? Are there some like structural patterns that you have observed?
Yeah, the structural pattern is that similar to Hire, they organize in teams. They provide teams autonomy, and depending on what is needed in their market, this is they have more autonomy or not so much autonomy. So it's a range of how far autonomy goes, but it's always a combination of giving more power to the people, but treating them as adults and not as childs. So they all ask for accountability. So own your results, keep your commitments. And companies like Nucor do that for decades. So that is a kind of structural similarity that is very strong in those companies.
You said something that intrigued me, and Tom, I'll get to you. I noticed you had this to round this off. You said something that intrigued me. You talked about the jobs to be done, and that they seem to have a role in how you structure. I don't know if that was an intended implication, but I somehow took that away from one of your remarks during the presentation, that there is something around the notion of jobs to be done that influences the form and structure.
Yeah. So the difference of antifragile organizations is that they have a strategy and they also have a purpose. But the purpose is not that what you find on the nice posters in the entry halls or this we do whatever. They are tangible, actionable. So, for example, I have a nice example from Hire. Mr. Yu, an employee at Hire, went to a restaurant and because he wanted to have a Beijing roast duck for dinner. And what struck him was that he got this roast duck in 20 minutes. And he thought of, well, what would be if people at home could do a roast duck in 20 minutes at home? So they get restaurant-styled dishes within 20 minutes, half an hour, something like that. Wouldn't that be great? And so he pitched his idea, and there were several people really engaged in this purpose, in this vision he had. And so they engaged, and they tried to figure out how to do that. So he worked with a chef who worked on the recipe. They tried different ingredients and so on. And then it became bigger because somehow they needed a kind of oven that was easy to handle, where you could just swipe through your mobile and say, okay, I want to do Beijing roast duck, and my duck is this size, and the oven just knows how long, what temperature, and it's just one click and it starts cooking your roast duck. So they needed a team that was able to build such an oven. And then they needed to find a farmer for all these ducks. So they also got into contact with a farmer that could produce those ducks, and that ended in having another logistic company in it. So they provide sets so you can easily buy, and you can prepare your roast duck at home. So it ended up with about 70 partners being in this tiny ecosystem around making Beijing roast duck happen at home.
In 20 minutes.
In 20 minutes. So they just come together to solve this, and in the end, by now they have over 300 different recipes on their app.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Tom, sorry, we kept you waiting. Please.
Hello, Janka.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Now, I'm quite fanatic on what I call strategy engineering. So, numbers. So I like to have numbers for objectives and numbers for how good the strategies are. But you didn't seem to mention anything about that. Do you do anything like that, or is it all words and feelings, or is it numbers ever?
We didn't touch numbers in the book because, of course, you need KPIs. In some way you need KPIs, but they are always context related, and they are quite different depending on, are you a team at Amazon that is really fast moving? Are you a team at Hire? Or are you a team at Nucor in a steel mill? So it is context driven, and so you can't say you have a standard set of KPIs. You can check on that. You really need to figure out what your business need.
Of course, that's the purpose of numbers, to help us differentiate and define. Let me take another tact. You mentioned anti-fragility and resilience. Okay, interesting subjects. I believe that and I've done it, you can define how much resilience or anti-fragility you want for your needs, and then you can architect or design to get there, to make a more resilient system.
Yeah.
Is that anything you've ever approached or seen, or?
Via numbers, no. We're just covering the organizational development setting, but we are not going down to the numbers or how to measure it. It's more about understanding the logic of it. Okay. Maybe in a second book. Would be a nice idea.
Okay.
But I think when I come up with that idea, my colleague would run out, leave.
Yes,
You
some
would.
people panic at the idea of clear.
Not because of the idea of numbers, but because of writing another book.
Oh, sorry,
So
right.
so far.
I sent you my book on strategy engineering, so you can see what I mean about using numbers. And if you want, you can put the ideas in your next book if it doesn't scare people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Well, in that case, I have one more, and I think you spoke to it, Janka. You talked about the digital backbone,
Yeah.
and I somehow sensed the scent of artificial intelligence in that construct. How do you see? I mean, what's the role of digital in the anti-fragile organization, and could you even be anti-fragile without a strong digital backbone?
No, that's the short answer, but I give you a bit more context. The topic is when we talk about organizations, we have people that need to organize to solve a certain task or purpose, Beijing roast duck. So they need to come together and they need to work together. So and they need to somehow get information, for example, about the market. They need to get information about how much money they can spend, about what services could they book via their platform, or what kind of services they need to look for outside the company. And of course, they need to collaborate with another team, for example, the oven team. And then you need to think of, you have to negotiate how you collaborate with that team and with the next team. And in the end, with 70 teams. That doesn't make sense. That is really bureaucratic, and you lose time, and you slow things down. So you need a kind of framework, underlying framework, a workbench, a backbone that offers you real-time market data, your financial data, and that also offers a kind of easy, lightweight contracting with other teams. So you don't have to renegotiate everything again and again and again. And therefore you need a backbone. 100, 200 years back, we don't had this kind of technologies. And so the answer of how do we effectively organize an information flow through an organization was the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked back in that days. And such decentralized teams that need to align each other regarding the purpose. You only can do that with a good amount of efforts when you have digital tools. So you have this single point of truth, that everyone gets the information on time, that knowledge flows through the company, what works, what didn't work. And so technology, the internet technologies, and of course AI and other technologies are enabler for these kind of organizational forms. Without them, they won't be possible.
Makes sense. We are close to the end of our hour. Is there anything we can do for you?
Yes, I have a question actually. I've been working with Agile and Scrum and even Safe last 15 years actually. And they're not every person that is interested in being in change and in constant change. What happens to the people that not are self-sufficient and strong?
Could you just, I had some.
I was just thinking that not everyone likes change, and then maybe they're in the company today. Do they stop working and go to another company, or do they adapt, and are they able to adapt? And what happens?
There is
slow down the pace, I would think. Yes.
Yeah. So I think there is always a group that will adapt.
Yeah.
And there will always be a group that will go.
Yeah.
So that is not a topic of anti-fragile organizations or other organizations. That is organizations with a strong organizational culture.
Yep.
Attract certain talents. If you don't like to work entrepreneurial, you would never go to hire or another similar company. If you hate bureaucracy and you're eager to have work that makes sense for you and where you can bring in your talents, then you will probably end up in some of these companies. So it's a kind of, where do you fit? Where do you feel at home?
Yeah. I was thinking at the start, it must be a process where people say, I don't want to be in this.
So hire, get rid of 10,000 middle managers because they no longer needed them.
Oh.
Some stayed and became entrepreneurs by themselves, others left.
Janka, thank you so much. Is there anything we can do for you before we leave each other?
If you like the talk, I would love if you leave a recommendation or something like that, or a comment on LinkedIn. That is always great.
Yes, yeah,
So
I'm gonna share the.
We still need a little bit publicity with a book and with the talks we do.
Yeah, well, I know you have had a busy month. I think we connected maybe 1.5 months ago, and you were very, very busy. And this was the first opportunity.
I was out the whole November to London, to Vienna, back to London, back home, back to London, and back here, and
So how has it been? How has the book been received, and how have the events been?
Very good. We were shortlisted for Thinkers50 Strategy Award.
Yeah.
So of course we are newcomers in that field. So we didn't win, but shortlisting is already a huge recognition. And my students, those I have currently 7 students doing their master thesis with me. They all had bought it, and they are totally enthusiastic about it. And so it's they really love it. And I hope that will keep a while, because we put 20 years of experience in that book, and a lot of hard blood, and it was quite an elephant to be pregnant with. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and thank you for
You're
joining.
welcome.
And all the best. I know you were struggling a little bit, but really appreciate that you took time to be here. So thanks a lot. And,
thanks.
Yeah.
Very much.
Bye-bye.